First up, the Navajo Nation stretches for over 25,000 square miles across parts of Arizona, New Mexico, and Utah. Treaties signed in the 1800s split the Navajos' territory, leaving them to live in desert terrain considered worthless by the United States government. Turns out the same land was discovered to be extremely rich in natural resources. Between the old treaties and the U.S. government red tape, the Navajo Indians have little control over gas, coal, and even their own water. Today, more than 40% of its 300,000 residents are without running water or even electricity. America's Now contributing correspondent Nina Donaghy takes a closer look at why many Navajo people are living in third world conditions in the middle of the United States.
The Navajo people believe they're custodians of the elements that surround them. The earth, the wind, the sky, and most sacred of all, water. Maintaining harmony with the environment is at the core of their culture. But a new Senate bill sponsored by Arizona Senators John McCain and John Kyle grants water rights to the Navajo community.
In exchange for legal waivers, the Navajo Nation would receive critical drinking water infrastructure.
But also benefits some of America's most powerful mining and energy companies. Back in Arizona, residents like Don YELLOWMAN feel they've been excluded from the decision-making process.
The people are very upset. They feel that they have taken a position already. We have been basically accepting what's been offered to us for too long and not challenging and saying, stepping up to the decision making and saying, these are our demands and this is what we insist on having.
He's concerned that implementing new regulations will lead to a repeat of events that occurred 200 years ago, when treaties were set in place that redistributed Navajo land.
New Senate Bill 2109, McCain and Kyle.
Not everyone is against the McCain bill, however.
Are you guys gonna quiet down, listen?
Navajo Nation President Ben SHELLY sees deals like this as a chance for the reservation to modernize and grow economically. He stood against many of his constituents by supporting the bill and feels some people have been misinformed.
Everything, anybody's against something because they don't understand. They didn't take part in it. They want to be a part of this, and if you don't know nothing, then you say no.
SHELLY argues that for the Navajo Nation, outside investment equals more independence for a community that all too often loses its young professionals to life outside the reservation.
They're doctors, lawyers, and all that, but when they come back to the reservation, there's nothing there for them to go to, so they go off the reservation.
The reservation's second largest urban area is Tuba City. Its Navajo name means scattered or winding water. And here, some pockets of land over underground streams flourish. But residents on the outskirts have no way of accessing nor purifying the water. Many are without running water at all and rely on local wells or haul tanks of water for themselves and their livestock. Despite the scope of their communal land, farming is almost impossible due to lack of water access. Tuba City Councilman Joshua LAVAR BUTLER says some aspects of the bill will continue to sell people short.
The people have an issue with water and the acreage of water that we are going to be limited to. It was supposed to include a Western Navajo pipeline, and it was completely deleted out of the bill.
Another sticking point for Butler is the inclusion of 40-year leases for existing local power companies, the Navajo Generating Station and Peabody Energy. Peabody extracts coal from the Black Mesa escarpment that dominates Tuba City. But for local residents living in its shadow, there's a complex rationing system to obtain coal, and much of the supply goes out of state.
For many years, they have extracted coal from Black Mesa. They built a railroad to the generating station, to the power plant, feeding the coal there. They're burning it there, and a lot of that electricity is then transported down to Southern California, Las Vegas, Scottsdale, Phoenix. Meanwhile, we have people here on the Navajo Nation, even within a 50-mile radius of these power plants, that don't even have the luxury of flipping a switch for electricity or turning on the faucet for water.
Many areas on the Navajo land lack even the basic infrastructure to harness their own energy sources, leaving most people dependent on outside, federally sanctioned companies. Well, as you can see, there are massive power lines cutting right through the reservation, but for many residents here who actually prefer to live in more traditional housing, you can see a Hogan house right behind me. They actually have to hook up their own power lines to the ones above to have any kind of electrical supply at all.
We finally got electricity and running water and cable and a telephone. So these are the kind of conditions people have lived in. And they remember.
For constituents like SARAHNA Riggs, the bill and its implicit deals with outside power companies interferes with the fundamentals of Navajo culture.
As a Navajo person, this does go against every being, every fiber of our being in our Navajo traditions. In Navajo tradition, it goes into our own creation stories and how we were brought up. We're here as protectors, Yes, we do need the infrastructure. Yes, we are educated. We have degrees. We went to school. We're in a mainstream society, but we also think of our own traditions, and that reflects everything. Everything is based on tradition. We're here as protectors of the earth, and that ties into everything in life. That's the main thing we always look at first.
For SARAHNA, the intrusion of these outside companies is an affront to her way of life.
It affects us traditionally, culturally, spiritually.
The Peabody coal mine does employ over 400 local people, but one natural resource that once brought jobs is having lethal consequences.
Uranium is a very big problem.
Abandoned Cold War uranium mines built to supply the US government's nuclear program, many left open for decades. Tommy Rock from the Navajo Environmental Protection Agency showed us just how close uranium debris from the Skyline mine in Monument Valley is to homes, and how as a result residents close by are suffering health problems.
Mostly cancer. The people complaining about cancer, people complaining about their livestock, what kind of effects are coming from their livestock.
Residents and their livestock depend on communal wells, some now too contaminated to use.
In Old Jittu chapter, there are 2 wells that were pretty high with the uranium, so they were shut down. And we're telling people, or the public, to use regulated watering point to get their water. Not a lot of people that live in this area have access to potable water within their home.
David Holliday's father worked on the Skyline mine.
My dad used to bring back a jug of water container, and he would say, "Boy, the water is so cold down there, it tastes so good," and from the mine, and we drank that, and not knowing that there was a lot of radiation in there.
His father died of uranium-related lung problems. The government compensates workers, but not their relatives who may also have been exposed.
Their fathers or husband brought back what was on their suit, uranium, dust, mud.
The US government pledged a 5-year plan to close and clean up Navajo Nation's 500-plus uranium mines. The cost, billions of dollars. But unpaved roads and rough terrain is working against them.
The problem is the cleanup, the cost of cleanup. As for Skyline, the problem is getting the equipment here just to clean this up. It'll cost a lot of money just to bring the equipment up and fixing up the road.
Navajo Nation knows it must somehow harness its own natural resources in order to catch up with the rest of the United States.
We need to begin thinking into the future 100 years, 200 years into the future and make sure that we do have the water that's needed to sustain the future. And as far as uranium, we do need to bring that to the forefront.
A desert land once judged uninhabitable and worthless has proved instead to be rich. But its loyal Navajo custodians still don't have the means nor the rights to profit from nor protect their environment.